FPL is coming at us thick and fast, and now we have injuries to highly owned players like Erling Haaland. We have suspension to highly owned players like Kieran Trippier. So today I'm going to be taking you through my game week 17 transfer targets. We're going to talk about some of the highly owned players in the game, but also players across defenders, midfielders and forwards that I think you should be buying into your FPL team going into game week 17. Welcome back everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes on the videos, the aim, subscribe if you are new around here. But as we always do, we're going to talk about some of those highly owned assets in FPL that I don't just want to put a video out recommending to buy the likes of Salah, to buy the likes of Son, that I still think, of course, are the priority buys if you don't own them at the moment. So Son and Salah and Ollie Watkins is back in here. We didn't have Ollie Watkins on this list while he played against Manchester City and Arsenal over the past couple of weeks. We took him out and he did blank twice. However, Villa did win both those games, and I do think he is a great forward. If you are planning on selling Erling Haaland, if you are planning on making a forward transfer, potentially selling Darwin Núñez, Ollie Watkins is still the number one forward to buy for me, despite there being a couple of other forwards that we're going to talk about in this video. The other two are Son Heung-min and Mo Salah. Now, both of them go away to international tournaments in January, to the Asia Cup for Son and the African Cup of Nations for Salah. They are both expected, particularly Son, to miss 3 or 4 game weeks of FPL. Salah, Egypt are maybe less heavily favoured than maybe Son and South Korea are, but both could definitely do well in the tournament, and both have definitely done well in previous years. So we will likely be selling them when game week 21 comes around. So for anyone who's unaware, they will play in game week 20 and likely miss game week 21 when they travel to those tournaments. However, that is still a fair few weeks away. You'll still have 4 game weeks between now and then. If you have an easy route to go and buy Son, if you have an easy route to go and buy Salah, then great. If Haaland is ruled out for game week 17 and you don't own Son or Salah, and you can easily do Haaland out to Solanke or Raul Jimenez, who we'll talk about in this video, and upgrade a midfielder, the Son and Salah, I do think it makes sense. Next up, we're going to talk about probably the most highly spoken about defender in FPL at the moment, and that is Pedro Porro. 5.4 million now. He rose up on Sunday evening, and I have confirmed him as a transfer into my team. I sold Matty Cash on Sunday evening using my one free transfer, so I have taken a bit of a risk. But I knew Cash is likely to drop this week. Pedro Porro is likely to rise at least once. We've already had that price rise. He might rise again. Looking at the upcoming fixtures, Nottingham Forest, Everton, Bournemouth in there. It is just the creativity that I like to add on top of that. Yes, the potential clean sheets are there. They've kept 4 clean sheets so far this season. So that's not amazing, but the past few games have been really difficult for Spurs with the amount of injuries they've had, with the suspension to the likes of Romero as well, with them having to adapt to play without Maddison. However, we saw on Sunday them look pretty good, fully adapting, playing Kulusevski in that role, Romero coming back, them adapting pretty well. And Pedro Porro is playing so far forward. Some of the images from that game, he's playing basically almost as a sort of 8-10 in that midfield position. He got the assist for the Richarlison goal as well. His positioning is very, very nice. So for me, if you're looking for a defender, of course, Kieran Trippier is suspended this week. I wouldn't go and sell Kieran Trippier if he's in your team. I would hold him on to him going into game week 18. As much as I'd love Kieran Trippier to drop in price and me to tell you to sell him, I don't think it's the right thing to do. I'd hold on to him. But elsewhere in your defense, Pedro Porro for me is the second best defender in FPL right now. Next up is the cheap defender, and it comes from a team that is going to cause a lot of debate for me, including him in this video, and that is Levi Colwill. There are other options, particularly Fulham defenders, that I like the look of, that are not going to make it into the video based on their fixture this week. The other one potentially is Senesi of Bournemouth. However, they're not naturally known for their defensive ability, and he is on 4 yellow cards. So I have opted for 4.6 million Levi Colwill in case anyone needs a set and forget cheap defender over the next 5 game weeks. Chelsea do sit top of the fixture ticker over that time. Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, Fulham at home in that, Wolves away, Luton away. Now, there are some games in there that you probably are not going to expect a clean sheet. However, I do think Levi Colwill, with the injury to Reece James and the potential injury to Marc Cucurella as well, is pretty guaranteed to start the majority of minutes for Chelsea. He plays left back. He can play at centre back as well. For me, he is probably the most likely to play the majority of games. At centre back, Disasi, Thiago Silva, Badiashile can all rotate. Colwill can also fill in there if he needs to. At right back right now, Disasi will probably play there whilst Reece James is out until Malagusto is back. Then Gusto will probably fill in. Cucurella can probably go in at right back. But right now, there's not many options at right back, which means Cucurella, when he does come back, is likely to play there. So Colwill is pretty nailed to play that left back spot. I'm not expecting them to set the world alight. He has 2 attacking returns so far this season, though, and he's set and forget for the next 5 to 7 game weeks. After Liverpool, they do have another green fixture. He's not expensive. He's not going to explode, but 4.6 million, given the injuries, making him a little bit more nailed as well for the Christmas period. I think he can be reliable. Second Chelsea asset is Cole Palmer. He has risen up to 5.5 million, but again, he is on 4 yellow cards. That's the only caveat for him. But when I look at players in and around that price, there are a few others that potentially could get a little bit of a nod, like Decore, like John McGinn, like Bailey at Aston Villa if he's not injured. But for me, Cole Palmer being on penalties is still the best asset to be owning in and around that sub 6 million price bracket. We know he's on penalties. They have a good fixture in the blank away at Wolves. The only thing is that 4 yellow card that he did pick up in game week 16 is a little bit of an off-putting part of his game, but still, he is probably Chelsea's main sort of consistent attacker. He didn't get anything in game week 16, but he definitely could have done. A couple of opportunities where he maybe picked the wrong pass. He had a couple of shots which were straight at the keeper. He definitely has the ability to keep returning. I brought him into my team and he blanked in game week 16. But to be honest, so did everyone. A lot of the other options that we look at around that price, a lot of the other players in our FPL teams at the moment blank. So just because that's the case doesn't mean I think that Cole Palmer is suddenly a bad option. The underlying data is good on penalties as well. Sheffield United at home in game week 17. So he is still a good buy at that price for me. And then going up front, if Erling Haaland is out, of course, Ollie Watkins, as we've spoken about, is the number 1 option to buy, but second is Dom Solanke. Every single week, I'm going to do this transfer targets video, and Dominic Solanke is going to be in it until his ownership gets higher and higher. He is still in under 10% of teams. Despite him being so consistent, he scored again. Bournemouth continue to look really good, and now they have Luton, Forest and Fulham in their next 3 games. It is almost the perfect Haaland replacement if you want to sell him from your team. Now, personally, I haven't decided if I'm going to sell him. I am actually leaning on the side of keeping him based on the fact that I have a decent bench and I could actually play a couple of players over the next few weeks that I don't think it's worth taking a hit to sell Haaland, given that I think he'll be back in game week 19. But if you are set on selling him, that I think over 50% of you probably are based on a poll I put out on Twitter the other day, I do think Dominic Solanke, outside of Ollie Watkins, is the number 1 player to buy. He's got consistency, he's got form, he's got the fixtures, he's cheap as well. It just makes a lot of sense to go and pick him up. But there is one final forward to consider, and that is Raul Jimenez of Fulham. He is fully back. He's taken the headgear off. He scored a header at the weekend. And FPL aside, I have to say it was so nice and so pleasing to see Raul Jimenez scoring goals, to scoring headers as well. So he is back and we know what he's done before, and Fulham really look to be clicking. The only, I suppose, caveat to him is he does go away to Newcastle this week, which is not an ideal fixture. Newcastle are better at home, but they have also been conceding a reasonable amount of goals recently. Predicted to rise up to 5.3 million tonight, Monday evening at time of recording. He may do, he may not do. But Burnley at home in game week 18, particularly in the blank game week, is very, very appealing. So if you've got Erling Haaland, you could sell him to go to the likes of Dom Solanke. You could sell him down to Raul Jimenez. But what you could also do is look at Raul Jimenez as a third forward, right? So if you've got a Cameron Archer like me, if you've got potentially a Semenyo at Bournemouth like some people do, upgrading them to Raul Jimenez and having him as a third option while you bench Erling Haaland until he is back available, probably in game week 19, if he's not available in game week 17, that could be a really, really nice option. Fulham at home, they look very good. They've scored 10 goals in their past 2 games. Burnley at home in game week 18. His underlying data is still strong as well. With Willian injured, he may also be on penalties, right? Which will make him an even better asset. So yes, you might want to sell Haaland, but it's definitely worth considering selling an Archer, for example, and just putting our Haaland on your bench if he is out. And finally, it is differentials. And we're actually going to talk about midfielders. In the top 5 players to buy, we had 2 defenders, 2 strikers, and only 1 midfielder, who was Cole Palmer, who I know is on 4 yellow cards and will be getting a lot of 50-50 looks at the moment. So all 3 differentials are actually midfielders now. The cheap one is Tavernier of Bournemouth. Has looked really good, and just like Solanke, has really nice fixtures over the next few weeks. But some of you might not have room to go and get Solanke in your team. I think Tavernier at 5.4 million could be a really, really nice option. Seems to be nailing down that spot in the team now. We've seen him do it before for Bournemouth, but he's not been consistently in the team. But he definitely feels like he is now. Luton, Forest and Fulham in the next 3, definitely worth consideration, opposed to the likes of Cole Palmer because he is on 4 yellow cards if you want a differential as well. Next up in price is Richarlison of Spurs. Now, Son played out wide against Newcastle. We don't know if that's a permanent change or if they did that just to target Kieran Trippier, who of course got that booking, of course now suspended going into game week 17. But even if that's not the case, Richarlison has looked much better. He was iffy at the end of last season. He's been iffy at Spurs for a long time. We basically found out that he's been having a recurring injury, which he had an operation with, which is when he returned against West Ham midweek and now has played against Newcastle at the weekend. And I have to say, he looked much, much more up for it and much better as a result. 6.6 million, Forest, Everton, Bournemouth with Brighton in there as well. The next 4 fixtures are great. If you need a punt, you've got Mbeumo still in your team, you need a midfielder to go and buy, I really like Richarlison as an option. And finally up front, it is Martin Odegaard of Arsenal. Again, 8.3 million. Bukayo Saka continues to rise in price. And to be honest, continues to disappoint a little bit. If you're looking for a midfielder, you can't go up to the likes of Saka. I really don't think it's the end of the world anymore. Saka just doesn't feel like he's at the same level that the likes of Watkins, Salah, Son and Haaland when he's fit are. So if you're a little bit short of money and you're looking at 2 transfers and you want Saka and someone else, really do consider Martin Odegaard as a differential. He seems to be back into the team playing alongside Havertz. He is very focal to what they're doing, and he is definitely one of those players over Christmas who's expected to play 90 minutes pretty much every game and start for Arsenal in pretty much every game. Saka is as well, but you do save a little bit of money, and I don't think he's much worse of an asset. So we've had highly owned assets, Watkins joining Son and Salah. Erling Haaland we've spoken about. If he's out, there are a few options in this video for you alongside the likes of Watkins. Then we've got Solanke and then Jimenez at cheap as well. Differentials, midfielders, defenders, all for you to consider buying into your teams going into game week 17. Thank you all so much for watching. 1,000 likes on the videos today and subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.